one of the writers that we are featuring tonight is Shogdung, and I think by now most of you have heard about Shogdung. He's considered by many to be the leading Tibetan intellectual, and until recently he was also kind of fated by the Chinese government, and many people thought of him as being in good standing with the government, meaning the Chinese government is sort of okay with him, and in fact liked many of Shogdung's works. And one of the reasons may have been because Shogdung is a modern Tibetan intellectual, and he also happens to be somewhat critical of some of the aspect of Tibetan Buddhism as we practice it in this day and age. Not necessarily against Buddhist philosophy. He had some problem with the way Tibetans practice Buddhism, and he spoke out against it. Anyway, this work that I'm going to read from, I'm just going to read one paragraph. It is called The Line Between Sky and Earth, and he wrote this after the 2008 uprising in Tibet. And the uprising, many people say it made Shogdung reevaluate many of his views, and in fact, in these pages, he makes very clear. He doesn't leave anything to interpretation. He makes very clear what his position is, and it's a really scathing kind of critique of the Chinese government's policies and handling of the protests. And he also talks about his pride in how the Tibetans have taken action, how the Tibetans have risen up. Unfortunately, we don't have a translation of this book yet, so I'll read it in Tibetan. I'll try to summarize in English afterward. This is from the first chapter. Ngansue phegi saji shiwe sarjiti zamling shikyun ki rawatan mangzor drebe shide rimjur ki tresu shade teba yina sarje di gölsa gerju ringlupa yimpatang tablam tseme shiwa yimba migyu rawanta mangzo yimba chegi chir kado sarje jesu songshin kado sarje jesu dang rungwante gerju chabungla kade chape sarje yi 소슈 자바이 바탕 최교기 카도 무르미 임베 벽이 최교 살지양 벽이 무르미 살지시 다호요도 코베 답에 벽이 무르미 살지양 사지 시웨 살지디 칠링 살람 타도 이동 게르 된시직도 당기 독진 담바 강라 네루 쳔보도바 대대신도 잠링 로규수 대바이나 살제라 Rishi debu malyogyang sarjela rishi gelka matokyang tubar gyurna tajime machubna yang zebe gyu shebatar pönam ge dromi riki rawan tang danyang topdang tang mangzo tang shide logyu kashe tsam mimba melam tsam mimba tang ngana meba tang subdu mebe cheje shasong she kowe kachonche de ma. So here he talks about the 2008 uprising in Tibet and what term we should use to refer to this uprising. And he says, around the world, outside Tibet, it seems that many people have been calling this the 2008 uprising. Others have called it by different names. And because this uprising was waged by the Tibetan people in order to fight for democracy, freedom, and rights, it can be considered among the many other color revolutions that we have been seeing in recent years. And here, he talks about the Rose Revolution, the Orange Revolution, and then he argues that because of this reason, if you look at Tibet and the uprising, there are a huge number of Tibetans involved in the uprising. At the same time, a huge majority of the monks and nuns, the monastics, were involved in this uprising. And because the color of their robes is maroon, it makes a lot of sense if we can call this uprising the Maroon Revolution. So Shogdung is proposing that we call the 2008 uprising the Maroon Revolution, taking after the Saffron Revolution in Burma. And he also goes on to say that this uprising has been a cause of great joy and pride for him, and because of the non-violent nature of this uprising, and because of the pride and noble belief with which the Tibetan people waged this uprising, it is in itself a thing of beauty. Whether this revolution succeeds or not doesn't matter. This revolution has become a thing of beauty to him. So this is what Shogdung has said in this paragraph.